Hi, today we're covering the disturbing disappearance and death of Ranger Randy Morgenson in the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. Randy Morgenson was a rather seasoned ranger. At the age of 64 years old, he had been working in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks for a total of 28 seasons, meaning in essence he was as veteran gets, as the most senior ranger in the High Sierra area. His knowledge of the wilderness was in essence unmatched. His expertise was unrivaled, and it so happens that on July 21st, 1996, he would leave a note on his tent saying that he would be away for 2 to 3 days. Interestingly enough, he had dated it to June 21st, even though it was July, and at that point he would set out from his station near Bench Lake, leaving behind his Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum. This would be the last time anyone would see him alive. Now, some information of note upon this incident. Randy had grown wary of what he had called Swinus Americanus, referring in particular to backpacking tourists, who often left garbage, litter, and other refuse, and he noted that they would more often than not have rather bad attitudes. His frustration with them was just one part of the complex web of strings that ties together this mystery. This tale was one of adultery and death in the High Sierra, involving one of the most experienced rangers the National Park Service has ever known, which led to a myriad of conspiracy theories, some more believable than others, and ultimately we would find out of Ranger Randy's grim fate. Now on to a little background information about the area in which the event occurred. Kings Canyon National Park is a stunning national park in the southern Sierra Nevada area of California. It's home to Kings Canyon, a glacier-carved valley that is more than a mile deep. The park boasts several rather beautiful 1,400-foot peaks, along with high mountain meadows, fast-flowing rivers, and some of the world's largest giant sequoia trees. Kings Canyon is located north and adjacent to Sequoia National Park. The National Park Service manages both these parks together as one entity, as the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. Sequoia National Park itself is located east of Visila, California, and spans 404,064 acres, including Mount Whitney, the highest point in the contiguous United States, 1,505 feet above sea level. This park is also renowned for its giant sequoia trees, particularly the General Sherman tree, which holds the title of the largest tree on Earth. General Sherman stands in the giant forest, an area that contains about 5 of the 10 largest trees in the world. These parks contain popular backpacking routes and the combined Pacific Crest Trail along with the John Muir Trail, which run the entire length of the parks north to south. Interestingly, it is estimated that 99% of the park's backcountry has visitors primarily stick to the designated trails, leaving most of the park's rather awe-inspiring landscape almost exclusively to the backcountry versed rangers. However, these parks are more than just beautiful landscapes. They are also the backdrop of the tragic story of Randy Morgenson, along with a handful of ghost stories, supernatural tales, and even some claims of extraterrestrial interactions, which have no doubt played a hand in some of the stranger theories surrounding Randy Morgenson's disappearance. Now that we know a little bit more about the location where the incident occurred, let's double back to focus on Ranger Randy. Randy Morgenson was a seasonal ranger for the National Park Services. Unlike permanent employees, he had to reapply for his job every single season, which meant he would not receive medical benefits or a retirement plan. Out of 14 backcountry rangers in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park, more than half had been returning every summer for over a decade, some for over 2 decades. These rangers, including Randy, weren't in it for the money, as it was noted that they often joked that they were paid in sunsets. However, if a ranger died in service, their family would get a one-time payment of $100,000, but no pension. Much like Gordon Wallace, one of the earliest backcountry rangers in Sequoia and Kings Canyon during the 1930s, Ranger Randy also believed that people could be willingly enslaved by the charms of the location and the beauty, along with the peace and harmony that the locale provided. Risked were able to ensnare even the harshest of person with its grandeur, and once it had you in its power, it seems that the park refused to release you for days on end. In part because of this, Randy had developed a rather notable disdain for the garbage left behind by visitors, which he would refer to as backpacker detritus. He was known to regularly haul gunny sacks full of trash and other refuse left by many unconscientious backpackers. All this while he was patrolling the wilderness. In his 1973 Macular Meadow log, Randy wrote, "All your life, someone is pointing the way, directing you this way and that way, determining which road is best traveled. Here is your chance to be adventuresome. Don't forever seek the easiest way. Take the way you find. Don't demand trail signs and sturdy bridges. Don't demand we show you the mountains. Seek them out. Seek them and find them yourselves. This is your birthright as an animal, most commonly denied you. Be free enough from intentions to find goodness wherever you are, and in whatever is happening. Here, for once in your life, you can now live by whim. Here's your one chance to get lost. Fall in a creek, find a beautiful place." And with this statement alone, it is easy enough to gather that Randy had really fallen in love with the land itself. It was just prior to the 1996 season that Ranger Randy's co-workers noted that he seemed rather down and dour. Eventually, he would confide in them, saying, "You know, after all these years of being a ranger, I wonder if it's been worth it." This statement was not entirely unexpected, as Randy had recently received divorce papers from his wife, Judy. For many a year, she had joined him in the backcountry, but recently she had chosen not to, which had led to an increase of internal turmoil for Randy, to the point that Randy truly messed up and had an affair with a fellow ranger. This greatly contributed to his marriage falling apart even faster than normal. This had gotten to the point that Randy had confided in a friend and fellow ranger that sometimes he contemplated self-terminating. On July 20th, 1996, he would radio his friend and his wife, asking some rather mundane but somewhat out of the norm questions for Randy. And it seems they noted that he just wanted to talk, and unfortunately the conversation ended abruptly when Randy said, "I won't be bothering you two anymore." The next day, Randy left his camp, and he was never seen again. And this is how the mystery of Ranger Randy's disappearance started. It is important to note that Ranger Randy Morgenson was rather well known for his low impact on the environment. It was something that he prided himself on, which made it tough to trace his exact direction and destination, especially with the rain in late July. Second-year Ranger Rick Sanger noted that Randy had failed to check in by radio for several days as he hiked through the night to Randy's station at Bench Lake. There he would find the note confirming that Randy was overdue from a cross-country patrol, and it would be then that Randy would officially be reported missing on July 25th, 1996. This sparked one of the most intense search and rescue operations in the National Park Service's history for one of its own. The Rangers were searching for one of their own, so emotions were rather high. Incident Commander Kaufman instructed the searchers to read Morgenson's logbook for any clues about where he might have gone or where he would currently be. He also had them assign a probability of area in order to search each segment, plus a rest of world probability for areas outside the designated search zones. Each ranger would be then divided to 16 segments plus rest of world probability locations, totaling 100 locations, as no segments could be assigned a 0. The Bench Lake Basin area got the highest probability of area at a 26.2%. while Marin Lake and its surroundings came in second at a 19.2%. The ROW was the lowest, for everyone except Ranger George Druk, a close friend who knew about Randy's rather dour mental state, and he assigned the ROW a significantly higher percentage. Each segment spanned somewhere between 500 and 7,000 acres, a rather wide search zone, making this operation rather difficult and hazardous since a lot of it was in the backcountry rather than the more commonly traveled trails, meaning the upkeep on said trails or any area would be, quite frankly, not the best. Nearly 100 rescue personnel scoured 80 square miles of wilderness, as they hoped it was just that Randy's radio wasn't working, due to being in a dead zone or because it was broken, not because something had happened to their fellow ranger. Not long before his disappearance, it was noted that Randy's radio had indeed stopped working, and that he had to hike to another station to get it replaced. It is incredibly important to note that a special investigator had learned that Randy had been threatened with violence on 2 separate occasions before his disappearance. However, both suspects had alibis. Some speculated that he might have left the park to start a new life, but his car was notably still where he had parked it, and there were no withdrawals from his bank account or credit card use. This search would go on to utilize CASI, Computer-Aided Search Information Exchange, a program which was designed to simplify calculations involved in managing search areas, as it provided information on how each segment was searched, by air, foot, with dogs, and or on horseback, and the effectiveness of those searches. However, this program assumes the missing person isn't moving and doesn't account for areas that are underwater or potentially underground and or even under rock slides. Days of frustration would follow as dogs picked up scents that abruptly disappeared, and random pieces of gear were found, but they could not be directly linked to Randy at this point. A helicopter with an infrared camera spotted at least one campfire on the hillside, which was suspected to be tied to Randy. However, no one was near it, and eventually the search would be called off, without finding Randy or any trace of his body. Eventually, a letter would arrive at Randy and Judy Morgenson's home in Sedona, Arizona, postmarked 2 days after his disappearance, and since there was no postal service in the national park, Judy was unable to fathom how Randy could have mailed it. This fueled suspicions that he might have left to start a new life. 13 days after Randy was reported missing in early August 1996, the official search, which had included helicopters, dog teams, dozens of volunteers, multiple park rangers, and even horses, was called off, as no trace of Randy was ever found, not even a footprint. What led to some of the more out there theories about what happened to Ranger Randy was the UFO craze that had been percolating at around this time, to the point that some believed that he had been abducted by aliens, while others believed more reasonable things, such as he ran into someone he shouldn't have out in the woods, or that he decided to end things on his own terms in the place that he had so fallen in love with, as his life fell apart around him due to his own actions, while others would still believe that this had been a rather clever way to ditch his old life and start anew, fresh, with nothing to drag him down. However, suspicions about his final fate would come to a head once again in July of 2001, 5 years after the search for Ranger Randy Morgenson was called off. It seems that a 19-year-old member of the California Conservation Corps stumbled upon some remains while venturing off trail. He had found evidence near a creek within a gorge in the Widow Peak drainage of a body. This was just slightly outside of the search area, in particular below the pools of a waterfall. Rangers would quickly be called in, and almost immediately they found a tattered shirt with Morgenson's badge on it, along with a backpack and a buckle fastened to a boot half submerged in water with a leg bone sticking out of it. The boot itself matched perfectly with the gear that Randy was known to use. Both investigation and recovery teams were quickly flown into this area, and shortly thereafter they found a functioning park issue radio on the top of the falls, and it was even turned on. Now the battery was long since dead, but still. This added to the confusion because it suggested that Randy might have been alive longer than previously thought, as rangers remembered searching this gorge, even though it was not within the official search area, and crossing right through where the radio was found. Retired Sierra Subdistrict Ranger Alden Nash speculated that Morgenson had fallen through a snow bridge and broken his leg, along with that his body had been hidden beneath ice during the initial search. Interestingly enough, during the 1996 rescue attempt, Judy, Randy's wife, had noted that she had had a dream about a dead man floating in a lake, which, if the paranormal tales about the area are true, unlikely as that is, it could be seen as a sign. Eric Bellum, author of The Last Season, a book which focused around Randy's disappearance, himself believes it was not an accident, as he would suggest that Randy staged his own end in order to ensure that Judy would receive $100,000 of death benefits, which the government wouldn't honor in a case of self-termination. If he wanted to throw the dogs off or make people believe something had happened, it seems that he had done a great job. After so many years, the bones had been gnawed, and there was no way to say exactly what happened, which has led to some believing that he was actually attacked by someone out in the woods, and eventually just dumped in this location. Again, this is a very unlikely scenario, but due to the degradation of the body, it's hard to definitively prove otherwise. Randy Morgenson's story is a haunting reminder of both the allure and the perils of the wilderness, as well as the dedication that those who seek to protect it often have. As a seasoned ranger at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park, Randy's life was intertwined with the Sierra Nevada's beauty and the solitude that the area could present. Despite his struggles and the mysterious circumstances surrounding his disappearance in 1996, and his eventual death, Randy's legacy endures through the unofficial Mount Morgenson and the memories of those who knew him, with a register at Peak Richard Petrosky. If you're going out into the woods, please be careful and try to stick to the buddy system whenever possible. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.